record this? Well, we record this for a few reasons. One is for anybody who misses the session, they can catch up, they can watch the session. And also if there's something that was said or the like that you want to review, watch again, you can go back and watch it. Also just put a little content warning in. We do use some crash scenes to understand a little bit more about crashes and how we can prevent them or minimize the severity of them. So if you just put it out there as a warning as part of the course. Okay, in the prize pit there is Kathy DeCoris. Kathy's the training manager at Safe System Solutions, and he's going to be our moderator. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Kathy, to talk through a few of the ways the interaction works.
Excellent, thank you. So many of you have already worked out the chat, and you could chat to everyone, or you can chat to just Ken and myself if you want to keep something anonymous. So that's the way you will be asking questions throughout the session. If for some reason the chat doesn't appear for you or doesn't work, you also have the Q&A button as well. You can ask questions that way. If neither of those work, you can always send me an email. I kind of monitor all of the platforms at the same time, so you can definitely get your questions to us. You can also raise your hand. So as Ken mentioned, we have everyone on mute so that there's no awkward moments where maybe dogs are barking or you forget to take yourself off mute and those types of things. I do that sometimes for everyone. But anyway, and so if you do want to make a point or ask a question, you can raise your hand and I can unmute you and we can all hear you there. If for any reason you're having any troubles at all with Zoom or your internet or anything like that, with freeze or something along those lines, best thing to do is to shut down, restart, and usually that fixes, almost 100% of problems. If not, then we have got your PDF slides on your memory stick, and they're also in Moodle, which many of you, almost everyone has jumped in there, and so they're accessible to you there, and you can dial in on the phone. So yeah, lots of ways to deal with any tech issues along the way, and I'll be your go-to person there.
Thanks, Kathy. And so yeah, no ability for cameras to go on in this, so you won't be seen at all. But as mentioned, if you really wanted to talk, pop your hand up. Kathy will unmute you. So lots of options: chat, Q&A, text Kathy, email Kathy. Maybe if it's a really important question, do it all.
I'll get the message.
The chat function works really well. Yes. Kathy will just be monitoring that and feeding me those points as we tick along.
Absolutely. So do ask the questions as they come to you. Don't wait for pauses. We will pause along the way, but just jot them in when you have them.
Yeah, let's keep the interaction up, even though we're in lots of different places. This is me. I'm Ken Beer, Principal Engineer at Safe System Solutions. We're a specialist road safety engineering consultancy. We run a lot of technical training in different topics, and Safe System Assessments is one that's really taking off across Australia and New Zealand, and there's a lot of interest in that. And I've been doing Safe System Assessments for about 7 years, and before that, doing lots of road safety audits. Well, I still do lots of road safety audits, but and I work for the Victorian Road Authority, Vic Roads, and now doing lots of different Austroads work and work for different road authorities. And there's my QR code to my LinkedIn, where you can find me. The reason I put that up there is that I think the road safety conversation is just, it has to be ongoing. We have to continue to learn and continue to discuss things and delve into issues and try to work them out together. And that's a pretty nice platform to just have that conversation and get varied input. So I think you know how to use a QR code by now, so you can do that. And I've got it in the bottom corner down here as well, and it'll be there throughout the next few slides, or you can just search. So let's connect and keep the conversation going. I'm your port of contact for technical questions associated with this course. So everything else, Kathy will look after, but if it's a question about the details of the assessment methodology or how to assess or road safety infrastructure or infrastructure in general, come to me. Shoot me an email, give me a call. Kathy, what's Moodle? You're on mute.
See, gets me every time. Glad you asked, Ken. So Moodle is our learning management system, and basically everything is housed in there. All of the resources, it's a duplication of what's on your USB. And what we ask you to do is jump in there and say hello, which many of you have done already. There will be a quiz at the end of every live webinar. So it's about a 10-question multiple choice style quiz, should take you no more than 10 minutes or so to do. And that is in Moodle as well. So at the end of each module, there'll be a quiz. It's also where we'll pop the recording. So if you happen to miss a session or you miss half a session or something like that, you can grab the recording of this webinar and you can see that as well. There'll be a couple of assignments and they'll be available to you there, and you'll also submit those through Moodle. And if you've got any concerns or any issues, or if you didn't quite get 10 out of 10, which you don't have to get 10 out of 10, you can always get in touch with me, but it's all good. I think that's Moodle.
Thanks, Kathy. All right, and this is Wally. This is Wally the Wombat. Wally the Wombat is a warning sign, as you can see, and Wally is going to appear in the slides of each module, just in different parts of the slide. And you have to count the number of times Wally appears in these slides. It's a way to keep you engaged, amongst other tricks we have. But keep a count of the number of Wallies. And in those quiz questions that Kathy mentioned in Moodle, you're going to be asked, how many times did Wally appear? And you've got to get that. Well, we gave you a little tolerance either side, just in case you might miss one. But now that one is not an official Wally, so your Wally count is 0 at the moment for this module. And we also do give out prizes. So Kathy is in the prize bit there. Now we give out prizes for a whole variety of things. If you are the first to answer questions correctly that I ask through the chat function, if you turn up early to sessions and you get involved in some of the trivia that we do, you'll be able to get prizes. We give out prizes for assignment work, so all sorts of wonderful things. How do you get those prizes? Well, if you successfully complete the course, and I'm about to tell you what that is. Oh, Kathy, what are you getting? Oh, socks. Oh, good prize. What are they? Lobster socks. Fantastic. So if you successfully complete this course, which I'll explain what your requirements are there, you're going to get an electronic copy of the certificate, but then a little bit later, you'll get a hard copy of the certificate in the post, plus any prizes that you've won will arrive in a nice little pack to your door. So how do you successfully complete this course? Okay, so we've got some requirements that have been set down by different jurisdictions, their road authorities or sort of bodies there. And we need you to attend 4 of the 5 live webinars and view the one you don't attend. Ideally attend all 5 of them live and interact and ask questions. If for some reason that absolutely can't happen, get in contact with Kathy and have a chat. You need to satisfactorily complete all the set tasks. So the quizzes, the assignments, and the site visit and report that will be part of the actual safe system assessment you'll do. And the benchmark is 80% in terms of anything that's marked. So that sounds pretty high, and we don't shy away from the fact that there's a reasonably high benchmark here, but don't get too concerned because we are here to help you through that. You get 3 attempts at everything, and if after your first attempt you're really struggling, get in contact with us. I will do one-on-one Zoom with you, phone chats. We'll delve into issues to really get you to understand it properly, and then you'll find it. Once you understand it, you'll find it easy. It's really, there's nothing in here that's super complicated, and you should all be fine. But that's what we require of you. Now, just to contextualize this before I get into the actual content, Road safety audits are an independent assessment of a road transport project, right? And they do a whole lot of stuff. There's design reviews, that's the independent checks, or, you know, you hand it over to your colleague, they do the check. Did you calculate all the drainage right? Did you calculate this right? Have you accounted for this? Does this meet standards? All of that sort of stuff. That's another beast. The safe system assessment is kind of this thing that has overlap in both of those, but has lots of elements and processes and ways of presenting things that is completely different. So one thing that a lot of people say is, well, why on earth would we do this safe system assessment? We do road safety, we do design reviews. Well, yeah, they're really good and important things, but there's stuff in a safe system assessment that's additional. Again, safety and design, another one that people think, oh, no. So a safe system assessment, is that just a new name for a safety and design workshop or check or report? Again, that's a sort of different beast. I mean, there's quite a few processes and things there. Maybe we could try to consolidate them all into one big assessment, but for now, there are all these different assessments. And then there's the sort of Disability Discrimination Act check. Can people in wheelchairs use the facility? Can blind people use the facility and the like? So there's all those different ones there. So that's just setting a bit of context before I get into any content about anything. I'll pause there and see if anybody's got any logistical questions. Or Kathy, did you want to add anything?
No, there's no questions at the moment, and I think that's all covered very well, Ken. So yeah, let's get stuck into it.
Good. Well, I want to acknowledge the traditional owners of the many varied lands that we're running this training on, and it does seem to be quite varied across Queensland. You're all Queenslanders, so that helps some specific content from my perspective. And Kathy and I are based in Melbourne, but when allowed to, we love getting up to Queensland and getting out and immersing ourselves in your road network and looking at things and the like. So put your questions in as we go. I'm going to start with a bit of content, and then I'm going to ask you some questions and get you to do a few little things as we go. All right. So by the end of this module, we want you to be able to list the elements or pillars of the safe system, determine kinetic energy thresholds of different crash types, explain the difference between traditional approaches and to road safety and the safe system approach, cite best practice in behavioural change and vehicle interventions, and give reasons why speed's a critical element of the safe system. I'm going to be nice to you here. Wally count is 1. There's your first Wally. As easy as that. Keep an eye out for Wallies. Now, I'm hoping that all of you have read this document and have a copy beside your bed and look at it most evenings. It is your road safety policy for TMR. And it's got some pretty good stuff in there. It's got some stuff that has some, I suppose, background and history as to why it's in there, and some stuff that's pushing ahead of the rest of Australia in some areas, and maybe some stuff that I think could go a little bit further. But regardless, one thing it does do is it absolutely commits you to the safe system approach. And it also commits you to safe system assessments. So it's very clear in there, and it squarely says that safe system assessments will be undertaken on infrastructure projects. That's it. So I suppose good on you for getting involved in this training, so you actually know how you can do those, or how you can procure them. You get somebody else to do them, and you actually know what you're an informed purchaser. You know what you're getting and what to expect, and then what to do with it. This commitment to the safe system is something that I just want to delve into in a little more detail, make sure we're on the same page. Some of you are going to go, oh, here we go again. He's going to tell me what the safe system is. I've heard this 1,000 times. Well, I'm going to give you a little bit of history on it. A few little other things that you may or may not know. I'm going to start with this diagram. This diagram was from the time that the federal government committed to the implementation of the safe system. So we all in Australia were in on that. We said, and the federal government said, we will adopt the safe system approach as our methodology for reducing death and serious injury, and we will implement it. But Kathy, I'm going to give a prize out for the first person to write down the year that was all happening. So what year did the federal government, the Australian government, commit to the implementation of the safe system? Just type in your guesses. First one to guess it right wins. Okay, we've got some guesses coming in now. I'll let it run for a second, see how we're going. We've got people, we're going around 2010, 2018, 2017. It's earlier than that. Okay, well, Kathy, I think we're going to give it to Brad. Brad
closest, yeah.
Brad's closest. Is 1 year off. It was actually 2004. That's quite a while back, isn't it? Brad said 2005, so it was pretty close. Queensland hadn't actually, at a state level, adopted it until about 2005 or even 6. So it's maybe why that was picked. But that's been around a while, hasn't it? So that's where it was committed. So it's taken us a while to get up to the point now where we're really starting to get stuck into it. Okay, so back to this diagram. It's an early diagram, and there's some interesting things about it. Don't worry if it's a little small on your screen or on your phone or whatever you're watching on. I'll talk you through it. The middle absolute center of this safe system diagram is this human tolerance to physical force. It's an interesting thing to have in the middle of your decisions around transport, but it's talking about how much force can humans handle before we break. That's the center of this original safe system diagram. Then you have these three elements around. You've got the speeds, you've got the vehicles, and you've got the roads and roadside. And that was it. That was the safe system. And then, you know, a number of people were saying, well, hang on a second. What about like behavior, people's behavior and attitude and compliance levels out there on the road network? And there was two camps going on there, really. There was people who were saying, no, that has to be an integral part of the system. And there was others saying, no, it doesn't. And in fact, the whole thing is we've got to make a system that's impenetrable to all of the craziness that people do out there on the road network, or all of the mistakes they make and all of the failures of humans. So the system should cater for that and step in and mean it doesn't result in death or serious injury. And there was a lot of debate and head scratching and, you know, people say, you know, angry about this. In the end, what they did is they popped in this alert and compliant road users as this sort of thing that's not really in the system, but it's sort of over the system. A lot of people, me included, really thought this was a bit of a failure. And the reason goes back to what I was just saying before, is that this just gives this absolutely easy get out of jail clause, or just, you know, freedom for us as system designers to say, nah, they weren't alert, they weren't compliant. Like, what can we do about it? You know, we designed the road, and if they fall asleep on it, you know, they've got to take some responsibility here. And the thing is that, you know, those scenarios, I say no. I mean, we've got to take responsibility that doesn't result in death or serious injury, because we're dealing with humans. And to say that we're designing something, we're managing something, or we're operating something that only works if humans act appropriately 100% of the time, well, it's not a system designed for humans. We need to start designing it actually for humans. When you understand humans, as I'm sure all of you do, because I think you're one of them, You make mistakes all the time. I've made many mistakes already this morning. None of them have resulted in death or serious injury that I'm aware of. And it's how we operate as humans. We make mistakes all the time. We learn from them. And sometimes, it's just a biological thing that people are more prone to risk taking. And it's, very hard to, without sort of, genetically engineering people, it's very hard to alter some of that. So we're stuck with humans operating and being involved in this system for a very, very long time. There may be a future where the cars are all driving themselves around and it's all got the humans out of it. But for, pretty much our lifetimes, we're going to be having the humans involved. So we need to start thinking about the system differently. And anytime it's really requiring huge amounts of human intervention in order to stop a death or serious injury, we need to start recalibrating that a little bit. Now, surely I'm already starting to get to the point people want to make statements or comments on that, and I welcome, because it's I'm putting some stuff out there that's a little bit, I don't know, controversial maybe. Anyway, there's lots of diagrams of the safe system that evolved from that 2004 model. There's one you might have seen. There's another one you might have seen. This one I hope you have seen because it's yours. And you've still got human tolerance of crash impacts in the middle there. You've got this interesting statement that sits around it. Work to prevent crashes that result in death or debilitating injury. And that's really interesting, because what it doesn't say is really important. What it doesn't say is work to prevent all crashes. That's not part of the safe system. The safe system absolutely acknowledges crashes are still going to happen because, hey, we got humans involved in this and they're going to suffer. But what it does say is that we're going to prevent the ones that result in death or debilitating injury, or change these crashes to lower the severity down less than those debilitating injuries. So when we visualize a safe system in the future, some point where we're up there, nobody's being killed, nobody's being seriously injured in road transport, but there's still lots of crashes. They're just minor. Property damage, maybe, broken arm or something, but not into that debilitating injury. Around this, we've got the elements. So we've got the roads and the roadsides. We'll talk a lot about that, and speeds, we'll talk a lot about that. Vehicles, we'll just talk a little bit about. But in a safe system assessment, you actually do a little bit of vehicle analysis to get an understanding of the fleet that's using the network and any uniqueness of that. And over here, there's this safe road users. And that's probably a different acknowledgement that we still can get some safety benefit from road users, and we still need to continue to invest and work on that. It's not the be all and end all, which is a sort of approach that has been taken in the past. And then around the outside, a whole lot of things: innovation, road rules, legislation, data analysis, monitoring, and all of that good stuff involved. Here's another diagram. I'll be pointing at a few things in this diagram. It's very much the same as the one we just looked at, but I'll just use that as a basis as I jump back and forth. So one thing I love also in your road safety policy and in Queensland, and this is really, there's only a few jurisdictions in the world that use a similar diagram, and you're in pretty exciting company because Sweden uses a very similar diagram, and a couple of the other countries up in Europe who are our world leaders in road safety. And what it is it's saying we've got all those elements to play with that we talked about: the speeds, the roads, the people, the vehicles. But if you feed that through these filters of crash force and human tolerance, so as in the force of the crash and how much we know humans can handle before they break, then you know your crash outcomes, right? And by doing that, you're sort of filtering everything through these forces. and tolerances. And it gives you a wonderful platform to work on. And essentially, that is one big part of a safe system assessment. We've got these principles. We aspire to no death or serious injury, right? It's an aspiration. Most jurisdictions are pegging their zero date, as in they say, well, we will achieve zero death and serious injury in road transport by 2050, 2056. I think Queensland's 2050. If you've set that date, New South Wales 2056, Victoria's 2050, and a lot of you are probably thinking that's just ridiculous. How could you ever achieve no death or serious injury on the road system? It's so there's so many challenges there. That's a long time. That's a long time, and we can do a huge amount in that time. But it does take some pretty serious commitment over a long time. But anyway, putting that aside, we're aspiring to that. People make mistakes, right? That is absolutely fundamental to the safe system, is that mistakes will be made on the road network. And we need to design to manage those mistakes. People are vulnerable, human tolerance to physical force, and we have this shared responsibility. So no longer are we able to just blame and say, well, they fell asleep at the wheel. I mean, clearly you have to be in control of the vehicle. They ran a red light, these sorts of things. Well, yes, we're not voiding them of any responsibility on the road network, but the ultimate responsibility is with us to create a system that means A, that can't happen, or B, when it does happen, it doesn't result in this death or serious injury. But I'm going to give you a little analogy of another industry before we jump into a little exercise, or maybe get you to do something. But I do welcome your questions or comments as we go. Let's jump out of transport. Let's get into manufacturing. Let's get into widget production. Okay, so you got a big factory and it makes widgets, and this is back a long time ago, right? And here it is. We've got kids working on the factory floor. It's a fairly open system. So we've got they go, the machines need to be cleaned. So they just sort of find some cheap labor and get them in there and say, this is how you do it. And watch out, these machines are dangerous. Don't put your hand in there, and, don't touch any of that. Don't go over in that area. And, they show them, this is how you do it. All right. Really dangerous in there. And they pat them on the back and they say, good luck, and we'll pay you, but be careful. Then they have lots of workers in there, and the workers, sometimes come in after boozy lunches, and it's a fairly open system, as I say. Everybody's told that it's very dangerous, but they have to protect themselves, and that's what we call a pathological safety culture. So there's no, you're not pretending it's safe. In fact, you very clearly tell them how dangerous it is, and you sometimes try and scare them a bit. But it's what we call a pathological safety culture. Then it sort of evolves, your safety culture, to this reactive. And people start to get sick of kids being killed in the machines and their arms being ripped off, and workers being killed. And they say, this is sort of, we've got to do something about this. And they start to rectify problems as they arise in this reactive safety culture model. So, that machine's killed a couple of people. Okay, let's look at, can we put a guard on it or something? Can we give them a stick so they push it in rather than having to push stuff into the machine with their hands? These sorts of things. Then it evolves to the next level. And this is sort of where the economists come into the game. And they start to look at the factory floor and they say, well, you're losing a lot of productivity. A lot of widgets are not being produced because the machines are down, because people are being trapped in them or killed, or you've had to clean it out because somebody lost their arm in there. And you're actually having to pay out the families of these people for the debilitating injuries or the death that's happened to them. And the economist says, I've done these calculations, and I think if you invest £10,000 in upgrades to your machines and your transport and this and that, it's actually going to return you £30,000 in increased productivity, more widgets, more sales, and quicker production. Then the manager goes, oh, that sounds pretty good. 3 to 1 return. Every pound I invest, it's £3 back. So it's pounds back in these days. And so off they go, and they do that. And then we eventually evolve the system to a higher level of safety culture. And it's what we call a proactive safety culture, which basically says there is this very high benchmark for safety. Tolerance of no death or serious injury. And we will produce widgets up to that. And if it can't be done with our assurance of safety, then we need to change the processes, or we stop manufacturing widgets until we get that right, or we have to completely alter things. We have to invest in stuff. Okay? So the safety is the absolute paramount, and then you work and produce widgets up to that safety level. And then once you're up there, it's continual investment in maintenance of your safety interventions and your culture. Now, I know that you've already done the analogy of the road system into this as I've been talking, because you're all thinkers. And where do we sit with the Queensland Road Network and the management of it and the whole transport system? Where do we sit? Well, let's think specifically actually about road transport system. Well, I'd say we sit definitely a bit in there, pathological. I mean, it's part of the legislation. I mean, we say you've got to be control of the vehicle, it's dangerous, and safety is your responsibility to the individual drivers or pedestrians or cyclists or motorcyclists. We love a reactive black spot program. People just wedded to that, Well, there's, the things we often hear, no, it's not enough crashes there to do something. Well, it's a very reactive safety culture. Calculating, well, we start to get into that, definitely. I dare say a lot of you know how to calculate a BCR on a safety program. No worries, we love a BCR. And there is a little bit of this. There's a little bit of this. We're doing some proactive stuff. There's some things that go into play. I mean, proactive, lots of examples. I'll just pick one random one. School speed zones, probably a good example of proactive safety culture, right? You do a benefit cost ratio on school speed zones in Queensland, disastrous investment, just horrible investment from a pure economist perspective. The reason for that, there's just not enough kids killed or seriously injured. There never has been. And the decreased productivity in terms of moving people around Queensland and making them slow down in these bits, you add all those 2 seconds, 1 second for every vehicle going through a school speed zone every day and the like, that calculates out as way, way more of a loss than what we would have from a pure economic perspective in terms of the kids being killed or seriously injured. And I use that example because it is so reprehensible to think that we would trade off kids' lives to gather a couple of seconds here and there across a whole lot of individuals. When you collectively add them up, it's quite a lot of time, but we don't do that because the safety is paramount. And kids, great hook, always in safety. Anyway, so I think we have got a spectrum and a spread in that. Okay, before we jump into a quiz, Kathy, I want to see if there's any questions that have come up.
Thank you, Ken. Yeah, we've got a question about the Australian vehicle fleet having a relatively long turnover rate, something like 15 to 20 years, coupled with the target date for death and serious injury. How do you see some of these elements coming together, and how can we help?
It's a great question, and quite sort of pertinent in understanding that this is a holistic system. I mean, we're going to talk a lot about the roads and roadsides because that's the area we play in. But the vehicles, absolutely huge role. And Brad's right there in that we have quite an old fleet. Somewhere around the 12 to 14 years, I think, and depending on your jurisdiction, it can stretch out a little bit longer. And there's a massive socioeconomic skew to that. And we find some of the communities at highest risk are driving the oldest vehicles, and there's a whole lot of challenges with that. Governments often look into buyback schemes, into subsidy schemes for safer vehicles. And there are different things pop up here and there. We've got obviously car manufacturing challenges in Australia, so we're not investing then in different local areas. So it's quite a complex challenge. But how can we help? Well, and what can we do in our roles? Well, you see that a safe system assessment has some questions in it that are asked around the vehicles and the safety features of vehicles. And there is an opportunity for us to start to push things along, push the barrow there. But another one you can do just immediately to help is, I don't know what TMR's policy is on vehicles, but if it's not that you only drive 5-star vehicles, there's an immediate question to be asked. Why not? If that's not if every one of your fleet cars is not a 5-star ANCAP safety rated vehicle, you've got to ask some questions. And the reason that's actually important is because TMR's got a whole lot of vehicles and they last for a few years and then they get hiked out into the community. And you actually see if across all of government and all of councils, if everybody was in if they had policies on 5-star vehicles, it would actually filter down to the community quite quick, and we'd bring back some of that the lag and the age of our fleet. Anyway, there's lots more things. We can talk about some of that later. All right. Well, on your screen, it should have popped up a little poll. And you're not being marked on this one, okay? This is not the quiz that you are being marked on. That's after the session, right? This one is just to get you doing something there. And you're getting asked 2 questions. One of them we've talked about, one of them we have not. Right, the first question we've talked about, so have a look at that. And then the second one we haven't. You just have a guess at the speed Usain Bolt travelled past the finish line, his world record 100-metre sprint.
Keeping us guessing with where you're going here, Ken. But we've had another question come in, which we might put to you now whilst people are completing that poll.
Yep.
How will automated or cooperative vehicles affect safety targets? Won't zero fatalities incidentally occur by 2050?
Yes, I'll talk a little bit more about this later, but I don't think it'll be incidental. I think it'll be very driven, and it'll be part of the way we play things out. There's a lot of modelling and analysis being done in road safety that takes into account connected autonomous vehicles. The turnover of the fleet's a challenge, as was said, but if everybody went into the best vehicle possible now, we'd get a sort of 30-35% reduction in road trauma. And they're semi-autonomous. They're like level 2 to level 3 autonomy. We've actually got quite a long way to go before we actually get to these sort of fully autonomous vehicles. And then we've got massive discrepancies in terms of people who can afford them, can't afford them. We've got motorcyclists, cyclists, pedestrians to deal with. How does that interact? So it's quite a challenging journey. But don't get me wrong, it's going to be huge leaps and bounds in our time. The thing that we play a role in, and we do in a safe system assessment, is ask, are we building anything that the vehicles of the future won't be able to read, to understand, to communicate with? It's a kind of sci-fi future question at this stage. We're getting more and more intel. Although, gee, those car companies really don't want to tell us what their systems do. They don't want to tell you how it reads the road, how it communicates, but we can get a little bit out of them. Anyway, but that's an area I think that we will be, as engineers, road designers, road operators, will be more and more involved into the future, is designing for the connected and autonomous vehicle. So lots of fun stuff to come.
Thank you, Ken. And yeah, so almost everyone's completed those poll questions. Just a reminder, you're not being marked on this one. So this one doesn't go towards your grading that Ken was talking about earlier. So feel free to have a guess and don't worry too much about if you get the wrong answer or anything like that. And I think we've just got a couple more people to go, and then I'll close that one off and we can share those results.
Thanks, Kathy. Okay, so let's have a look here. We've got, which of the following is not a key principle of the safe system? So aim for no death or serious injury, aim for no mistakes on the road, and most of you went with that, and most of you are correct. Yeah, so we're not actually aiming for no mistakes on the road because we know humans are involved. We're aiming to manage and minimize those mistakes. Minimize and manage is a good way to think about that. We would love no mistakes, but yeah, we know it's not quite achievable. The others, we're certainly part of the safe system. We have that aspiration for zero death and serious injury. Usain Bolt, yeah, 24, 34, 44 kilometers an hour crossing the finish line. And most of you are correct on that as well. 44 kilometers per hour was the speed of travel past the finish line. So that is, why am I asking that in a safe system assessment course? Quite interesting, isn't it? Well, what I'd like you to do is imagine in your mind that we park a 2015 Toyota Camry at the end of Usain Bolt's lane. And he comes running down there at 44 kilometers per hour and slams into that Toyota Camry. Will he survive? Well, the answer is yes, he probably will. If we plant a big gum tree at the end of his lane, and he runs smack into that, will he survive? Again, probably. He's going to hurt himself a bit, but odds on he will recover to lead a normal, healthy life. In fact, humans have evolved to run into stuff off the speed of their own legs. So there is a very sort of interesting correlation between maximum running speed and tolerance to physical force when running into solid objects. So your maximum running speed will be pretty close to your threshold for force running into a tree or a brick wall. So that'll be assignment 1. And after this session, you've got to run as fast as you can into a solid object. Of course not. But it's a neat way to think about physical force. And especially when we're traveling around the road network in things that propel us way faster than that, or come at us way faster than, we can run. It says to a degree, it's why humans have an inherent fear of heights, because we understand that the speeds we will get to are far beyond what we can handle in terms of force. But we never really evolved in that in the horizontal plane. So anyway, that's a different story. But we have some of this data and information. Okay, we've got these graphs which came out of Europe. And what they are is understanding of the collision speed down here. Okay, that's actual speed of collision, not speed limit, right? Not 85th percentile, nothing like that. Just that's the speed of impact. And over here we have fatality probability. Okay, So that's the chance that when pedestrian in this case is struck by passenger vehicle, car, at these speeds, that's the chance that it's going to result in death to, a member of society. And it's across all members of society. Usain Bolt comes in a bit up the graph because he's a fair structure, isn't he? He's a hulk of a human. He's going to handle more force than old people, young people. And we see that this is sort of this general correlation. So down around 10, 20, 30 kilometers, the people are highly likely to survive these. Up high here, up around 60, 70 kilometers an hour, they're highly likely to be killed in that incident. These are the kind of forces that humans are designed for, right? Hopefully that's streamed for you. I'll play it again because we can have a laugh at it. Because he's okay. Yeah, okay, he broke a rib or two, but he recovered, went on to win the gold medal the next year in the Olympics. So, yeah, it's these are survivable forces. We have this information and data for other crash types. This one is a right angle crash between passenger vehicles again. This one we call the bullet vehicle, right? The bullet vehicle, the one that does the striking, and this one's the target vehicle, right? The collision speed is the speed of the bullet vehicle. The fatality probability is the target vehicle, whichever side's being struck, the driver's side or passenger side if there's a passenger. So we know that around the 30, 40, 50 kilometer bullet vehicle speed, it's survivable, highly survivable. Up around 80, 90, 100, it's highly likely to result in death to the target vehicle. We have this information for head-on crashes as well. But this is around the 60, 70 kilometers an hour is fairly survivable. Up here around the 90, 100, quite unsurvivable. In this case, both vehicles are bullet vehicles and both vehicles are target vehicles. The speeds I'm talking about here in collision speed are not the closing speed on a head-on crash, okay? This is the individual vehicle speed. So take 70 kilometers per hour, for example. That's 70 for this vehicle, 70 for this vehicle. Closing speed would be 140. But the actual force on the occupant of the vehicle is a 70 kilometer per hour crash. It's the equivalent of a car running into a brick wall at 70 kilometers per hour. Now, I reckon some of you are questioning my physics in this one. And that's fair enough. So I had to scratch my head for a while on this one and get back to the old year 11 textbooks from physics and the like. But luckily, Mythbusters has done my job beautifully for me, and they've done a whole episode or a short episode on exactly that, forces of head-on crashes and crashes into brick walls. So, Kathy, can we make sure that everybody has that Mythbusters episode available to them to watch? And of course, it's always good to watch Mythbusters on work time because you can say, Ken told me as part of the training course, I have to watch this. So this is a really interesting way we're starting to play things out to understand crash types, speeds, and then the expected outcome for humans. And we've given you this graph because a safe system assessment actually starts to put some numbers to this. It's kind of numbers like, low, medium, high, chance of death and the like. But here's a little graph with crash speed, again, collision speed, but it's also got this list of crash types, and then it sort of grades up in color, the likelihood of death or serious. And it's a real grade, right? We know pedestrians struck by heavy vehicles around 70 kilometers an hour, they're going to be killed like that. The physics just absolutely. you know, in some of these areas, there's always chances of survival in different mechanisms. So it's a bit grey. But you will probably be coming back to this when you start to do assessments and trying to score severity of crash outcome when you're predicting crashes. This diagram is sort of the bane of my existence in road safety. It really annoys me. And it's not because it's technically wrong or anything like that. It's just how it gets used. But it's the output of a crash causation study. And these happen all the time. Like there's so many crash causation studies out there. And what they do is they take thousands and thousands of crashes and they analyze why they happened, and they do, you know, big crash causation diagrams, and they come out with, you know, the causes of this crash. And that, like 85 to 90% of the time, it's the driver or the pedestrian making error in judgment, inappropriate behavior, whatever it is. Small bit of the time, the road's playing a role in crash causation, and vehicles even smaller than that. The reason this really grates me, this diagram, is because people then look at that and they go, well, you've got to attack the biggest cause of crashes. We've got to change the humans. We've got to alter humans. But just because they're 80 to 90% of the cause does not mean that they are 80 to 90% of the solution is changing humans. Right? We need to get that mindset out. That is a real old traditional mindset, right? The human is the hardest thing to change in this system by an absolute country mile. But we need to look at altering the system around the human, still doing everything we can to try to support the human to, you know, good practices and behavior and all of that, but change the system around it, because in fact, it's been going for about 50 years, crash causation studies. It's not changing. The road user is still 90% of the issue. What we want to look at is really a system. We just call it a system failure. The system failed. The system failed by letting the crash happen. The system failed by that crash resulting in death or serious injury. And we need to alter the system if these are happening. This is an Ostrodes diagram. They have driver inexperience, driver excess outside here. I would put them in. Because I'd say, well, you know, okay, driver inexperience, driver excess is like 200 Ks down the wrong way on a motorway, or inexperience is, you know, absolutely no idea the road rules or how to control the vehicle or anything like that. The reason I would put them in the system is, I say, well, why would our system let somebody drive down the wrong way of the freeway at 200 kilometers an hour? Like, why would the vehicle let that happen? It just is crazy. You know, we could even alter the infrastructure so that's impossible. Or, yeah, no, we could make that impossible. I'm sure you can start even thinking of ways you can do that. Do this slide, then I'll jump into an activity and take some questions then. But in road safety, there's this sort of view that death and serious injury in road crashes are, you know, all these behavioural choices. They actually fall down to these deliberate violations when you look at human error in the transport system. But we have all of these categories of error in the transport system before we get down to some intentional choices to do bad things on the road system. Slips, lapses, mistakes, unintentional violations, they are all things that just people out there going about their business, trying to do the right thing, are subject to. Deliberate violations are your actual choices to misbehave, to intentionally run a red light, to drive when intoxicated, and you know you're intoxicated. These sorts of, you know, choices. So there's a big study done by the Centre for Automotive Safety Research out of the University of Adelaide into this sort of stuff, and they discovered that when you're talking about fatalities on the road network, somewhere around 40% of fatal are in the deliberate violators category. When you do serious injury, it drops way down to somewhere around 30%, high 20% are deliberate violators. Thus meaning the overwhelming majority of our trauma on our transport system sits above this line. People trying to do the right thing, going about their daily business. Okay. Let's do this little exercise. Now, what it is a little mix and match exercise, trying to sort of understand where have we traditionally been in approaching road safety and where are we moving to under this safe system approach. And so what we're going to get you to do in a second when we put the poll up is to try to just connect from victim blaming, and then you'll have choices. Which one of these do you think we're moving to? Victim blaming, are we maximizing safe mobility, or are we enhancing focus on consequence, or whatever it is? And you just do that for each one of them. Now, I'll tell you now that a few of them probably could go to a number of the different categories. So don't get too concerned. As Kathy said, you're not getting marked on this. This is just a way to sort of solidify some of that thinking in your mind about the way we, have approached road safety, and often the way that the general community looks at road safety, and where we're trying to get to with this safe system approach. So Kathy, if we can pop that up. Okay. Oh, there it is. Right. Okay. And I'm also going to leave you as an opportunity now to do that and then have a stretch, get a glass of water or coffee or whatever you want. We'll come back in 4 minutes and 40 seconds.
Thank you, Ken. How very specific of you.
There's a little clock going on the poll, so
right.
When
okay.
it ticks over to 5 minutes,
5 minutes.
That's going to be the end of it.
Okay, great. I'll pause the recording here, and if you have any questions, do type them in, or otherwise, yeah, if you work on that activity, that'd be great.
And let's have a look here. Okay, looking pretty good. I'm going to actually, I'm going to stop sharing that, and I'm going to do it on the screen instead because it's easier to follow. But I had a quick look there, and most of you, I think, are thinking along the same lines. And a couple of those ones I mentioned, which could go anywhere, they were the ones that are a bit split by people. But victim blaming, we're really moving to, recognizing human error and minimizing its consequences. We're having that shared responsibility. There has been an emphasis on road user education and compliance. We're not ignoring that, but there's more now of an effort to create a forgiving system. Focus on crash reduction, to an enhanced focus on consequence, especially severe injury minimization. So crash reduction implies sort of like all crashes and the like. We're really focused in on that high-end severity. 4 pillars, action independently. 2, 4 pillars, optimize jointly as an interaction, understanding that there is huge interaction between elements of our system. And mobility, safety, balance. Well, to maximize safe mobility now is where we want to go. I'll talk about that a little bit more shortly, but it goes back to that sort of widget production stuff that I was talking about earlier. You maximize your mobility as long as it's safe. Really good statement. I think you should read and put up on your wall or something. We need a paradigm shift in road safety policy to stop the road death epidemic, and we need it now. It is unrealistic to expect that education and enforcement alone will bring the needed step change. Even road users who know and follow the rules make mistakes. A safe system creates an environment in which simple mistakes will no longer kill people. The majority of the world, the majority of our community, think that education and enforcement is the answer to road safety. I tell you now, it is not. Is it a part of it? Maybe, yeah. But it's really not. Let's do another little exercise. Here's a road, Melbourne Highway. Some of you might know it, some of you might not. It's got a central barrier system in there, right? And a narrow median. There's another bit of it you can see. (100km/h) speed environment. Before the treatment, it had one lane in each direction with the occasional overtaking lane. Had a barrier line separating. It's the white line separating. This project was thought about due to crash history, but also inherent risk of driving along and being exposed to the potential of death every time you pass a vehicle. So it was proposed to put a central barrier system in. Pretty logical. Now, I'm not going to tell you the full history of this or show you the designs or give you a lot more information, but I just want you to have a guess at reasons in the development of this project. It was extremely hard to get this project up and running, and they faced a whole lot of roadblocks in the way of different things that came up that they had to try to work through in the development, the design, and the funding of this project. So, as I say, you don't know anything about it, but just jot them into the chat. And because I'm on a prize giving spree for a Wednesday morning, I'm going to give out a prize for anybody who matches a couple that I jot down, which are not necessarily the biggest. They weren't the biggest roadblocks, but they were certainly significant roadblocks that had to be worked through.
So as Ken mentioned, just pop it into the chat. You can share with everyone or just send your comments through to all panelists if you like, and we'll go through them shortly. And everyone's getting the right idea because there's lots coming through. Thank you.
Now, remember, you can write it to just Kathy and I, or you can write it to everybody if you want by just using that little drop-down menu there.
So just recap, Ken, the question. Oh, you sneezed there. So just to recap, the question was, what sort of challenges were faced when putting in this central median barrier? Is that right?
Yeah, in the project, in the design and the getting the project over the line and actually implementing it.
Great.
And if you're the first one to jot down one of the, I only put down 2 of the list of like 100, but we'll see it goes. And I'm already seeing that a lot of people here may have been involved in these types of projects, or at least have enough experience in road authority to know the challenges you usually face on these kind of things. Okay, where am I going to start here?
Well, can I give some prizes too, Ken?
Yeah, sure, Kathy.
Okay.
You're in the prize book.
I'm in control.
Yeah, your prizes. All right. Well, I'm loving this. I'm just going to sort of read through a few of them, point out a few. I won't get to all of them because it's a huge number. Okay, let's go. Land acquisition to get additional road width. So political and cost implications of that, and benefit cost ratio, the cost of the project and the benefit. They were both certainly issues that were faced in this one. The proactive treatment approach, is it, were there enough crashes? Good. These were questions that asked. And actually, interestingly, they were saying, well, the crashes are people falling asleep. Let's stop them falling asleep. Let's build rest areas instead of this barrier. Cost design standards. So design standards is an interesting one there. So that's a username. I'm not sure who that is. MG Mori. I'm going to give a prize for that, because design standards was an absolute nightmare. All right. And I've got that was one of the ones that I put, and I want to delve into that a little bit more. But let's have a look what others said. Cost, motorbikes. Yeah, the motorcycle community were pretty angry about this idea. Access. So Eric gets a prize as well. Eric was just the first to put it in, just a little bit before PM Singh there. So Eric gets a prize. Issues with a longitudinal grade, crests, sight lines, so stopping sight distance, barrier, practical constraints, impact on traffic during construction, vegetation removal, wildlife, cyclists, environmental emergency vehicles, not being able to overtake when you're on one side of the road there. You know, what if you're stuck behind the old granny going 70 kilometers an hour, different technical things. Looks like a 2+1 highway from Scandinavia. Right, Eric. Oh, that's Eric again. We only give one prize per question. It does very much. It was very much based on the Scandinavian 2+1 model, which is good. So I'm just sort of reading through there. This is absolute classic, and it just shows me that you all know that these things come with lots of challenges. The thing, though, that we always need to do is look up or zoom out and say, you know, are we getting a safer outcome here? And the answer is absolutely we're getting a safer outcome here. And we need to do everything we can to get these in. And it's so easy in our work to just resort to what's easy. You know, don't put the barrier in, you know, still meeting standards, still meeting guidelines. And yeah, okay, I know there's going to be some death and serious injury, but you know, people have got to stick to their lanes. It's so easy to just walk away from these inherent problems that are in our face and have been there for so long. But pushing through these is what we've sort of got to start to do to create a safe system environment. This I wouldn't call a fully safe system environment. I mean, the safe system is a spectrum, and that's really important to know. This gets us significantly closer to a safe system environment. There's a few challenges for us still to work on. The design standards one just blew my mind in this, and I got involved as a sort of independent reviewer of the job from a technical perspective. And basically the thing that was pointed out by the design people was that barrier does not have enough deflection without going into the opposing lane. So those of you who know how a barrier operates, the posts break away, the barrier deflects, and the vehicle will get drawn back. And that was going to deflect into the opposing lane by about that much under the design stance. We cannot do this. And this is where you just look at it and you go, okay, there's something wrong here. If we don't do it, there is no barrier. There is nothing protecting. There is no separation. So we're worried about a little bit of deflection, tiny bit of deflection into the oncoming lane. And it's because that, is documented as a standard somewhere. And so this is, ideally you would get that full deflection, but they couldn't in this circumstance due to some of those challenges that you were putting out there. So they're compromising the CARP, the Land Act, the native vegetation, and that's what, it was there. So we really need to sort of look holistically at what we're going to get major benefit from the community on. And the blind following of standards and guidelines is unacceptable, in my opinion. I mean, there's a lot of standards and guidelines that are very, very great, and we should be following them, but you've got to always critically look at them. And the thing is that this went in, maintenance was a the maintenance teams were like, you can't put that in there. It's going to get hit. We can't maintain that. That's insane. Of course it got hit. That's what it's in there for. And it gets hit. And interestingly, after it was in for a few months, it got hit once, and somebody called the road authority. I was involved in that incident. And they said, I just want to talk to the people who put that barrier in the middle of the Melbourne Highway. And they got onto the engineer that was sort of responsible for the project. And when the public calls us, they go, here we go. They're going to have a shout at me about something. But they just said, oh, listen, I just want to thank you for putting that barrier in. It saved my life. I was just driving along, and a car veered straight at me, and they hit the barrier and slid along the barrier, and I was there with my wife, and if that barrier wasn't there, we would be dead for sure. And to me, that's like real sort of safe system in action, because it's the system catering for the mistake that's been made. The engineer was crafty enough to then go and tell the comms team of this, and they got those people, and they created a little video about this, and we've put that into your memory stick and into Moodle, and I want you to watch it. It's like a 2-minute video, and it's just a wonderful video to show that these aren't bad people. They're not doing anything that normal people wouldn't do. One of them fell asleep, and if the barrier wasn't there, we would be blaming. We would say, "Don't drive when you're tired." Bloody hell, what are these people doing? But the barrier just stepped in, didn't care why, just did its job, and we don't have death or serious injury. Now, we should be taking that attitude to the full network and trying to make it so when mistakes happen like that, it results in this: a bit of property damage, not death or serious injury. And we can do it through many layers of the system. The old Swiss cheese model, some of you would probably know really well. The idea that for a crash to happen, you have to find a hole in each slice of Swiss cheese that has to line up. And you can intervene in any slice of the Swiss cheese. The road user traditionally is our last end one, and it's got the most holes in it. It's a really holy Swiss cheese. But we're trying to close those holes and the like. Okay, keep your questions coming in. And I'm going to tick on with a few other road users and a few other elements of the SAFE system. And a little bit later, hopefully we'll get into starting to talk a little bit about SAFE system assessments, which we take on again next week. Let's talk about the road users themselves. And I don't want anybody to feel that the SAFE system has completely ignored trying to get better, safer road users. Okay, that's part of it. It's just recognized as it's a part of the system. Education, enforcement, encouragement, and the licensing system itself. Education works really well on young kids. We know that. We know that in all industries. And we can really encourage safe driving as well through the kids to their parents, through putting seatbelts on and those sort of things. They'll tell their parents to put their seatbelt on. We know that young drivers are at particular risk, and we know that there's a lot we can do in that space with improved training for them. And I'm not talking about high-speed skid training or anything like that. In fact, that actually goes the other way. That makes people more likely to be killed or seriously injured. What I'm talking about is training in how to not drink drive, not be involved in any of these inappropriate activities, how to perceive risk on the road network, and give them their full 120 hours with a supervised drive. And that is the benchmark, and that's what is actually proven with research around the world to improve things. I've put a fact sheet into your memory stick and on Moodle that actually talks to you about what works and what doesn't work in behaviour change with young drivers. It's quite interesting. It gives you all the research behind it as well. And these are like really quality research reports. This one's really important about how we talk to and how we change behaviour in drivers. I'm talking about drivers here. We could relate it to motorcyclists or pedestrians and the like. if you tell somebody they shouldn't use their mobile phone and drive because they will be involved in a crash or they're likely to be killed or seriously injured, they would just go, nah, I don't think so, mate. That's just definitely not the case. And the reason for that is twofold. First of all, they're spot on. Like the chance that you will be killed or any individual will be killed using their mobile phone while driving is minuscule, just tiny, tiny risk, right? At an individual level. But what we work in is the collective, right? We are thinking about the addition of all of those minuscule risks, which actually for society comes out to be a pretty big risk, okay? But we're talking to them like they're a collective, but they're an individual hearing it. They're like, mobile phone and driving is highly risky. And they're like, what a load of crap. I've been doing it for 10 years. I've never had I'm not saying me, but I'm saying that, this is what they're hearing. They're like, I just don't believe you. So what you actually have to do is relate it to things that they can believe in. And this is a lovely diagram from the TAC, the Transport Accident Commission, that basically goes, you drink, drive, you use your mobile phone and drive, and your kids are going to use their mobile phone and drive. In fact, if you drink, drive, your kids are going to drink, drive as well. That's another, but that's a whole different story. But it's showing something directly that they can correlate and understand. Now they don't think them using their mobile phone is risky, but the kid using the mobile phone, I'm not. That's risky, and they won't use their mobile phone, at least when the kids are in the car. Is there questions about the number of hours going on there, Kathy?
You spotted that, Ken. Yes. There's some debate about 420 or 120. I think you said 120.
I did say 120. I don't think I said a full 120, which I maybe was slurring my words. The 120 was in the research is sort of found to be the point where you're getting the most amount of your benefit for the effort, and then it sort of tapers off after that.
I'm going to give a prize to TM Cuttle because he said a full 120 hours. That is the most attentive person ever.
Right. Maybe he's got that feature going on Zoom, which puts my words into text down the bottom.
Oh, that would be fun. God knows what you'd say. Okay.
I better hurry up, Kathy.
Yeah, we do have a question actually. Could we do a quick question now?
Yep.
You're tracking well with time. We've had the issue with design standards for many years. I believe it's tied up with the Queensland workplace health and safety requirement for building works to bring everything up to standard. If you touch anything, it has, and this has been applied to road design, and with professional liability involved, you could understand the resistance we have to make something safer without making it completely safe, according to current standards at least. Would appreciate your thoughts and comments on this issue.
It is a really great question, and it's a real legal question, and I'm not a lawyer. I do get fascinated by some of this on a few levels. The one thing that I suppose, a report that New South Wales government commissioned, and this is a really great report, but they never really made it public. They got the real expensive lawyers in, and they did this massive investigation into, would a road authority be held liable if they followed the standards, but they knew something safer could be done, but they followed the standards anyway? If that makes sense. So take that one back where the Melbourne Highway. If they said we're just going to do a wide centre line, yeah, we can afford a barrier system, but it meets standards to do a wide centre line. Could they be held liable? And the outcome was yes, they could. they could be held liable for that. If you are aware that you can do something safer by not following standards or guidelines, you are obligated to do that as the manager of the road system. Your obligation is to the protection and the safety of the public. This becomes a really interesting one in Queensland, and Victoria and New South Wales are going down the same track in terms of the sort of registration of engineers and the like. I debate, like, I think it lines up even more strongly with engineering registration, which I'm a registered engineer. And I signed that document and my commitment to the protection of the health and safety of the community. Right? That's what we did, right? So if I can find ways to do that, that is the obligation. But the thing is that if there's a documented standard or guideline, you sort of got to prove that you are doing something safer, which makes it a little bit more challenging. Right? Then you've got to talk about these occupational health and safety or workplace health and safety requirements of if we do anything, we have to go the gold plated. Well, I don't think that that's quite the way it is in the legislation. And I admit, I do not know Queensland's workplace health and safety legislation enough. But road upgrades, progressive upgrades in all the legal cases that I've expert witnessed or done different things involved in, is there's a complete acknowledgement from the legal systems that there is not infinite funds available, right? But what they do not accept is absolute randomness in what is chosen to do, right? So if you have systematic processes in place for upgrades, for works, for the like, and justification around why you've done certain things, I think, not giving you legal advice here, but that's a decent process. It does need a lot of thought and a lot of work. But certainly the idea of doing something like, oh, well, we're not going to put audio tactile edge line down on the road because if we do that, immediately we're going to have to put barriers, and we're going to have to seal the shoulders, and we're going to have to put central barriers, and the job's gone from a $200,000 job to a $20 million job. The courts understand these things. They're getting improvements in what can be done within the reasonable funds. But that's a real one for a long sit down and a coffee or a beer and a long chat about it.
Another one that might be in the same boat, Ken. If you had a set amount of money, are you better to get one site really safe or 10 sites more safe than existing?
Yeah, so that's a real strategic network investment question. I've got some models that different jurisdictions use on that about how they allocate funds. The best way generally is seen as to analyze under a death and serious injury or fatal serious injury. I got an FSI per 100 million spent, and you get an indicator of benefit across different projects, and you then look to optimize your benefit. And so it'll be then very case specific on the efficiency of the infrastructure, the volume of traffic, those exposed to it, and so you sort of make this mix. But the real answer, the second answer to that is that if we are genuinely aspiring to zero death and serious injury at some point in the future, we're going to need to make significant step ups. And so what you can actually do is start to do gap analysis in a set of predefined key performance indicators of your network in terms of energy management and the like. And then you can go to filling the gaps up to that performance level that you want. That's a whole different way to go about thinking about your investment. I've got lots and lots of documents and reading around that, which I could provide if somebody's interested. Email me if that's a space that you're playing in, and I'll give you a whole lot of different stuff. Right. What works in behavioural change of humans? Education through a whole school's approach throughout their career. Pretty good one. Combining education with other partner activities like enforcement, like infrastructure. Supporting community education. There's a real desire from the community to improve road safety, some very motivated people who have been touched by road trauma. The thing is that we've got to play a role to ensure that they are evidence-based, what they're doing. And it really makes me sort of weep when I see community groups investing in things that either we know makes things worse, like advanced driver training courses, like where they learn how to get out of high-speed skids or do high-speed braking maneuver. Anybody who goes into that comes out more likely to be killed. That's because they're more confident, they take more risks because they think they can get out of these situations. But, you know, they're investing their hard-earned money in putting their young drivers through that. So that really saddens me. Taking them through the emergency ward, the trauma ward, or the morgue, another one. The one doesn't actually make things worse. That just doesn't do anything for changes in behaviour and traumatizes the kids. Graduated licensing systems work really well, where we know they're the highest risk when they come into the system, and we put lots of restrictions on them. And then they graduate up. So maybe no passengers, no mobile phones, no alcohol. And then you sort of like let some of these go. Education, targeting especially motivated groups. So parents, giving parents strategies and ways to help their young drivers be safe. And action programs to change the way road users use the network. I'll talk about that more shortly. Okay, what doesn't work? Fear tactics. Fear tactics only tend to alter behaviour of those who are going to be super safe anyway. The ones that are going to take all the risks are not affected by that. Skill-based driver training, I talked to you about that. That's high-speed skill-based sort of stuff. You know, basic control of the vehicle, great. One-off events don't work. Driver simulators and go-karting clubs or car racing clubs, there's no evidence around any of that improving road safety. And in information-only approaches, just telling people how many people have been killed on a road doesn't seem to change behaviour. Again, only possibly effective on those who were extremely safe anyway. And we know that, you know, supervised drivers are extremely safe. As soon as they're not supervised, the death rate, or the number of deaths, is on the y-axis here, goes off the charts, and it sort of comes down over time. In fact, you never get back to as safe as the supervised driver. So it shows you a little bit that skills are not, you know, the biggest issue here, are they? These people don't actually have any skills. But, you know, these people do. There's a little bit of trickery in that, because that's not a rate, that's an actual number of crashes, and so you'd have to do it by vehicle kilometres travelled as well, but it comes out just, you know, a little bit safer anyway. Encouragement's good. Paying people to drive safely is actually quite effective. Tell them, you know, they'll get a free license if they don't have any demerit points over 10 years or something. That can be quite effective. Actually, 10 years is probably too long. It works well with the P-platers and the like. If they have no demerit points, they get a full license for free. Seems to work. There's some research and evidence around that. Advertising a specific behaviour, like take a break every 2 hours rather than just, you know, fatigue kills, drive safely, or something like that. Give them the specifics, give them the strategy to use. And some comedy is good for recall, and so people will remember the messages better if there's comedy with it, if you can do that. It's a hard topic to make funny. We're talking about something pretty serious. And we want to, you know, sort of try and change this whole culture around road safety to make our jobs easier. But you'll see a lot of stuff now coming out, which is not like your fear-based road safety campaign, but it's actually talking about elements of the safe system. And I've put like 4 or 5 little ads, which I think are quite powerful ads, for one reason or another, into your memory sticks. You can watch those and maybe share them with others and the like. But this one's a really good one. It talks about people making mistakes, not about you making a mistake, but other people are going to make mistakes. So you need to sort of slow down a bit. We're starting to talk to the community about human tolerance to physical force. That's a hard one. I use that Usain Bolt analogy all the time. The TAC came up with Graham. This is Graham. Graham is a life-size sculpture that is like scarily human looking. And has been designed with trauma surgeons, crash reconstruction specialists, and the artist, obviously, to create a human that would be able to survive the forces of the crashes on our road network, the common everyday crashes. And so Graham's this weird looking thing with a big neck and head and all these different bits and like funny limbs because your limbs get crushed under the different things. But Google Graham road safety and have a look at Graham, or come down to Melbourne and visit Graham in the museum complex. It'll blow your mind. But it's what it's trying to do is it's changing a culture and a generation of people who are going to question the energy and the forces that are all around us when we're on the road now, that we are not designed to handle. Enforcement's a good thing, and it underpins a lot of road safety, but certainly the police will be first to say that it's not the be-all and end-all in road safety. We want to be strategic with our enforcement effort, and we want to look at specific deterrence and general deterrence. Specific deterrence is, I have been fined for this, I will not do it, hopefully. General deterrence is, I could be fined for this, and I will not do it. And visual presence is actually really quite effective in policing, obviously. And you get a lovely, what we call halo effect, which is after anybody sees any enforcement activity, they have a good halo of safe driving behaviour, and then it sort of diminishes as they go away from that. Cameras work beautifully, point-to-point speed cameras work beautifully. There's exciting technology coming. Mobile point-to-point is one that I'm particularly excited about. So basically, like a mobile fixed speed, or like a mobile camera, but you put a mobile camera at one point and then like 30 k's down the road another one, and you get your average speed over that whole area. They're much more, you cover a lot more area. And then, there's wonderful in-vehicle style enforcement techniques, which, the technology is not the challenge here. It's the political will. Alcohol interlocks, wonderful. Got to be 0-0, blow into it, and then the car goes. Actually, our version 2 of those, we had to do that. It randomly then beeps at you, and you've got 5 minutes to blow into it again, because there was a little bit of other people blowing into cars and then other people driving them. It's disappointing. But certainly we could have speed interlocks, no issues there. I mean, we could put, we've got the whole network map for speed, and we could just make cars not be able to go above the speed limit. Maybe you start with recidivist speeders, people who just cannot control themselves. Lots of cars have, a different key available for young drivers, so a bit of that graduated risk taking. But this is what's my key? My key is Ford's one, I believe, where you give one key to your kid and it just sets maximum speed for the car. Traction control's always on. Don't do burnouts. Actually, it can even regulate the volume of the radio if you want. But that's available in lots of cars. There you go. There's my Vic Roads car from about 16 years ago with a ISA device in it, which is telling me what speed zone I'm in. Beep it at me if I go over the speed limit. A lot of new cars these days have it all built in, but technology's been around for ages. Political will is a challenge, and privacy and those sorts of things. Questions, Kathy?
No, I think we're okay at the moment.
Okay. Right. So let's have a quick chat about vehicles. We talked a little bit about that before. I'm not going to go delve into this in detail, but in a couple of modules' time, this is all going to come play out a little bit. When you discover in a safe system assessment, you get asked questions about the road users, the behaviour, any initiatives that are in place or could be put in place. You get asked questions about the vehicles, the safety features, right? So we know that 5-star safety rated vehicles are really good, and we can get a lot of benefit out of these. But how good are they actually? Well, I think there's a bit of a misconception out there in the community that they are, for some reason, you know, if you're in a 5-star vehicle, you're pretty much fine if you're in a crash. So much the case. So here's a 2012 Toyota Camry, I think, getting crashed. Is it a Camry? It's hard to tell. Anyway, it doesn't matter what it is. This is the frontal offset crash. And to get a 5-star on this, you need to crash the vehicle, and the forces on the dummy in there have to be not enough to give level 3 brain injury, serious injury, acquired brain injury, or the other, or death, basically. It's a pretty high level stuff. So first one to tell me what speed they run that test at. Jot that into the chat. What speed do they run this test at?
Got some guesses coming in. Is it going to be maybe lower than what people are expecting?
Well, no, there's a couple of people in there who have put in one that's just slightly higher than it. Yeah, this is quite a knowledgeable group there. We'll come back to that. Okay, let's have a look at that. Well, the first, I'm going to give it to DY Willie. This is very hard with usernames, isn't it, Kathy?
Okay. Yeah, why are you giving it there?
I'm giving it there because
David. It's David. Anyway.
David. Yeah, it's 64 kilometers an hour. So David said 60.
Okay.
Yeah, so 64 is a very precise number. But okay, 64 kilometers an hour. Now, I think we're going to be involved in head-on crashes a hell of a lot faster than 64 kilometers an hour on the Queensland Road Network vehicles out there. Oh, side impact with a pole. How are we going on time? Yeah, all right. Have a guess at this one. Same idea. Crash it into a pole. Actually, sometimes you propel the pole at the vehicle, but slide the vehicle into the pole. What speed do you think they do this crash test at? All right, we'll give this one, Kathy, to TD James.
Done.
Oh, that was maybe yeah. There's a few people bouncing around it at the same time, but I'm going to give it there. I've sort of picked that one. It's recently been raised. It was 29 kilometers per hour, and it's gone up to 32 kilometers per hour. Hey, these are pretty low speeds, aren't they? When we're considering the speeds we travel around the network. And TD James was close there, not quite exactly right. But so this is, I suppose, the point is that, yeah, 5-star vehicles are good, but we need to continue to work on making these more, or making these better. But also we've got to think about creating our road environment to be catering for some of these forces as well. Because if we have the vehicle with safety features and the road with safety features, or ways to manage speeds within sort of more tolerable levels, then we're starting to get sort of double benefit there. Pedestrian impact's done at 40, actually. It's not done like that. That's dodgy. Well, the diagram's probably not the best. They actually just fire ahead at the bonnet. We talked about when are we going to see this type of vehicle, no steering wheel, and get us fallible humans out of this system. Yeah, it's a long, long way away before. Well, we might see or we do have seen little ones of these plodding along the foreshore at 20 kilometers an hour. We see little bits of the network where you can take your hands off the steering wheel and the car will drive itself. But to get it to be in control of the raft of things is a challenge. We have 5 levels of autonomy. Level 5 is this vehicle. Level 1, we've had around for a long time, cruise control is basically level 1, those sorts of features. Yeah, we're going to evolve up, and it's going to get better and better. It's going to be very complex how that interacts with, automated vehicles, non-automated vehicles, and legislation. And there's an Australian report, and I think it had identified like 1,400 pieces of legislation across Australia that mean you can't have a vehicle like this. And anybody who's tried to change any legislation knows how painful that can be. So let's go with that 1,400 times. So then, and they sort of continue on. But regardless, we should be encouraging as much of this as we can because it gets the fallible human out of the system. This sort of level 2 autonomy or auto emergency braking, level 2 and 3, where it brakes because it sees something. Sometimes it doesn't work so well, like that end one. Although, to a degree, I'd say that's still a win because the vehicle's slow before it hit the pedestrian by itself. And we'll still have crashes. They might just be slower. But there's still a lot of work to be done on that. Speed is a critical, absolutely critical aspect of road safety and the safe system. And anybody who says otherwise really just needs to start reading research and evaluations and discover that speed is unbelievably important in road safety. There's a few reasons for that. Take a object at 45 meters away and you're traveling at 60 kilometers per hour, or a person is traveling at 60 kilometers per hour. Sees that, reacts. We know you've got to react. You've got to process that. It's got to go into your brain and right, I got to do something. You've got to lift your foot. And then they've got to brake. And they just touch it if they're traveling 60 kilometers an hour. They're going 10 kilometers per hour faster, 70 kilometers per hour. They hit it 46 kilometers an hour. Yeah? This is telling you or reminding you it is not a linear relationship, right? Small increases in speed, big increases in impact speed, right? That's one big reason. The other is this sort of, you saw those S curves I showed at the start, where again, it's an exponential threshold of injury to humans. Like, so if you're near that threshold point, you jump from what it can be a fairly minor crash to a fairly, a fatal crash in a very small change in speed. And we know this, and the red line here is fatal, chance of fatal crash, and the yellow is serious injury crash. And this is change in speed, percentage change in speed. And you see small percentage change in speed, it's a power relationship with these high-end severity. A power relationship. It's a fourth power for fatals and a third power for serious injuries. So small changes in speed can be massive when they play out through this chain. Public really not convinced on this though, especially when it's talked about in speed limits. There's some interesting stuff out of asking the public about their opinion on speed limits and safety and speed and safety and crashes and safety. I won't go through that in detail, apart from to say that there's a bit more understanding of the public about severity of crashes. They understand basic physics. And that's good. Maybe we can play on that a bit. I really don't think speed limits, well, over half the population doesn't think speed limits actually change the crashes on the road. There is an absolute mountain of evidence to show that it does, but we need to convince the people. And I'll remind you back what your diagrams are saying. Crash forces. Crash forces are the result of the speed, the vehicle, what they hit. The road user, which just really depends on how frail they are in terms of what they can handle.
Question, please, Ken.
Yep.
So why do we continue to design rural roads for 100+ kilometres an hour if we know that speed kills?
So the safe system sort of acknowledges that we need to move people and goods around. Okay. So we can get a pretty good safe system straight off the bat, 30 kilometre per hour, 20 kilometre per hour, everywhere. We just won't move stuff, which is the purpose of our transport system. You can create a very good safe system at very high speeds. And in fact, often I'll use an analogy of the best safe system environment we have is actually a racetrack. They have infrastructure designed for speed, big areas of energy absorbing, for any fixed hazard. If they go into an area with vulnerable road users like the pits, they have slow speeds. The drivers are alert, they're compliant, they're certainly not, or any time vehicles are merging in, they're going at speed. So we don't have like intersections like we do on the public road network. And under all of sort of the vehicles have got all the safety features you can imagine. Under these parameters, we can go very high speeds and be very confident we're in this safe system. Occasionally we have some incidents, but in general, it's a really safe system environment. So I don't like people to say speed is the answer to, safe system is all about reducing speeds, because that's not what it's about. It's about getting appropriate speeds for the environment. Now, the reality is, though, that we do create a lot of roads that we have an existing, just an absolute mammoth amount of road network that is designed or operated at speeds that are hideously inappropriate. I think we've got a huge challenge, and especially in regional Queensland and the like, because we know it's not appropriate, but the change is going to have some massively serious impacts on people's travel time. And I think we could derail ourselves really badly with the community if we jumped in and started putting 80 or 70 kilometre per hour speed limits on some of these roads, which would be very appropriate from a pure safe system perspective. But we just need to be a bit more targeted in how we sort of go about doing this. It gets very complex. But you can do some safe system assessments and you can come up with, theoretical speeds that people could be traveling that would be safe, and then you can make some at least informed decisions around this. But we get safe speeds through infrastructure and or speed limits. Don't forget that. It's not just the speed limit, and explaining why speed limits are in place can improve compliance. So like this one here, school speed zone, it's more accepted and generally better compliant with. Some of them not so good. And vulnerable road users and their protection is generally pretty well accepted. Was there another question there, Kathy?
Yes, there was, but I think you were kind of covering it as you spoke then. Is it that they realise driver behaviour may not change with speed limit changes?
Yeah, that's part of it. Certainly. That's why I always like to opt for infrastructure improvements if I can, rather than looking at the speed limit. But there's a big dollar sign that comes along with that often. All right.
Excellent. 5-minute warning too, please, Ken.
Yeah. What's the formula for risk? Somebody? The international formula for risk. Risk equals something times something. Any ideas? Pop it in the chat. You get a prize, probably. Likelihood consequence. Belinda, you are a prize winner. Hope you're keeping track of this. Oh, then they all come in after. Likelihood times consequence, or likelihood times severity or impact, or whatever you want to say. It's what is the chance bad thing is going to happen? And then when it happens, how actual bad is it going to be? And this is not like just road safety risk. This is like international definition of risk. Financial risk, health risk, environmental risk. It's all, what's the chance of a recession and how bad's a recession going to be when we're there? It's the risk of recession, that sort of stuff. We do it in road safety as well. But when we come to a safe system assessment, we do this little tweak on this. And we actually extract out of likelihood exposure and likelihood. So we say how many road users are exposed to this risk, then what's the chance of it, resulting in a crash, and then how bad is that crash going to be? That is what we do in a safe system assessment. And we get some good analysis and we put some numbers to each of those. This one with the physics, biomechanical tolerances of the human body. This one with a lot of stuff that road safety auditors do and identifying things that might make people crash, visual to see, not enough cleared area on the roadside, bad camber, drainage, whatever it is. And this is our volume, traffic counts, pedestrian counts, cyclist counts, just numbers. And so we can start to look to influence these. The exposure, well, we can block off intersections or level crossings and stop anybody being exposed to that crash. We can take a road user like cyclists and move them away from vehicles, thus not exposed to that crash, like this separated facility in Brisbane, I believe. We can try to reduce the chance people are going to crash. Wide centre lines, audio tactile edge line, sealed shoulders, guideposts, good signs, line marking. There we go, Bruce Highway there. And these are all the likelihood of the crash happening. We want to reduce that likelihood. Traffic signals are the same. They reduce the likelihood of the crash. And neither of these are doing anything for the severity of the crash that if it is still to happen. The severity is influenced by the speed of the vehicle, the angle of the crash, the road user involved in the crash, as in the vulnerability of the road user involved. So things like slowing vehicles through intersections or providing barriers. So instead of them hitting a tree and coming to an abrupt stop, they hit the barrier and they slide along the barrier and they dissipate their energy over time. These are all attacking the severity of the crash. Okay, so for us to do a safe system assessment, what we want to be looking at is each of those elements and analysing, have we done everything we can in each of these and how well are we doing in all of those? And that's what we're going to be delving into next week. I don't think we've got a quiz at the end here, do we, Kathy?
No, we don't. And we might even go into it on Friday, probably.
Oh, did I say next week?
Yeah, but that's okay. You meant Friday. So we're all good there. Now questions come in and we've got like a minute to go. So I'm just going to share my screen. Are you right to take there's a question for a future session. That's very kind. Thank you. And I'll just show people where the quiz is, if that's okay, Ken.
Yep.
And I think we are here. So there's that Mythbusters episode that you mentioned. So that's in Moodle. And the module 1 quiz is there as well. So that's where you do that one. And just underneath there will appear the recording in a couple of hours or so, once I get that up there. So I think that's about it.
Yeah, so do your quiz. And if you're really struggling on anything, get in contact. I don't think you'll find the quiz too hard. Next module, we're going to delve a bit more in depth into the infrastructure and design decisions and those sorts of things. So looking forward to that on Friday with you. And you log in a little bit early, chance to win a prize in the trivia. Otherwise, have a great day and thanks for logging in.
Thanks very much, Ken. Thanks, everyone. Bye.